Frodo waking up in Rivendell isn't exactly a big surprise. I mean, Tolkien basically told us in the prologue he would survive. But the things we learn in this chapter, while they seem, insignificant first read, can tell us a lot about our characters and the story moving forward. So let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Auda and Tulava, where we're walking our way through Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Today, we're talking about Chapter 1 in Book 2, Many Meetings. As Frodo is startled into acute wakefulness, he begins asking questions of Gandalf. Gandalf is rightly reluctant to fully answer Frodo's questions, but spares him a few nuggets of information. One is that Gandalf was captured, which begins this back and forth. "You?" cried Frodo. "Yes, I, Gandalf the Grey," said the wizard solemnly. "There are many powers in the world, for good or for evil. Some are greater than I am. Against some I have not yet been measured, but my time is coming. The Morgul Lord and his Black Riders have come forth. War is preparing." "Then you knew of the riders already, before I met them?" "Yes, I knew of them. Indeed, I spoke of them once to you. For the Black Riders are the wraiths, the 9 servants of the Lord of the Rings. But I did not know that they had arisen again, or I should have fled with you at once. I heard news of them only after I left you in June, but that story must wait. For the moment, we have been saved from disaster by Aragorn." Talk about a shocking reveal of Frodo. Gandalf, famed for his fireworks, was held captive. He does not tell us by whom, but it must be someone exceedingly powerful in Frodo's mind. I mean, think about it. Gandalf is a wizard. I don't know exactly what that means to the hobbits, but Gandalf has barely even gotten older since the time Bilbo remembers the fireworks as a little hobbit. And he's 128 at this point. I don't know if hobbits maybe thought of him like maybe some kind of elf. Maybe if they knew their Voluspa better, they'd know it essentially means wand elf. But either way, it has to really blow a hobbit's mind to find out someone like Gandalf can even contend with someone and not just win. And as we've had quite a few chapters and adventures in between chapter 2 and now, I would completely understand if you'd forgotten every little part of Frodo and Gandalf's conversation in Bag End. I mean, Frodo clearly did. That's why he's so surprised to realize that he knew nothing, that he knew about the Black Riders all along. Gandalf tells us he only learned they were roaming outside of Mordor after he left Frodo a few months back. More information about that is in Unfinished Tales. Man, ring wraiths. The 9 kings of men that were given rings by Sauron that became wraiths, which I guess would be a good time to talk about the word wraith for just a quick second. The first few times I read the book, I just thought a wraith was the ring wraith. Pretty circular reasoning, but Ring of Words, great book by the way, gives us a little bit more. First, the OED definition. An apparition or specter of a dead person, a phantom or ghost. Or number 2, an immaterial or spectral appearance of a living being, frequently regarded as portending that person's death. The authors of Ring of Words make a great statement saying, Tolkien has taken the first sense and given it a particular twist. The ring wraiths are a kind of living dead, invisible and completely controlled by Sauron by means of the rings they once wore. And honestly, it sounds like it sucks to be a wraith, at least a ring wraith. Makes me wonder if the ring wraiths enjoyed being what they were, or if it was torture for them. And Frodo almost became one, and he would have been even under those ring wraiths, who are, again, under Sauron. It takes this explanation from Gandalf to really get it across to Frodo what would have happened. They tried to pierce your heart with the Morgul knife which remains in the wound. If they had succeeded, you would have become like they are, only weaker and under their command. You would have become a wraith under the dominion of the Dark Lord, and he would have tormented you for trying to keep his ring. If any greater torment were possible than being robbed of it and seeing it on his hand. Well, it's pretty horrifying if you ask me. The gift of men stolen from you, forced to live forever but partially in the unseen world, unable to fully enjoy the beautiful world, mostly blind except in the dark, sensing, hating, desiring the blood of the living. Hard pass for me. And the fact that Sauron did this to people starts to give us a better idea of who Sauron is. And looking again at letter 183 of Tolkien's, we'll see Sauron wanted order. He had gone the way of all tyrants, beginning well, at least on a level that while desiring to order all things according to his own wisdom, he still at first considered the economic well-being of the other inhabitants of the earth. But he went further than human tyrants in pride and the lust for domination, being in origin an immortal kind of angelic spirit. In The Lord of the Rings, the conflict is not basically about freedom, though that is naturally involved. It is about God and his sole right to divine honor. The Eldar and the Númenóreans believed in the one, the true God, and held worship of any other person an abomination. Sauron desired to be a god king and was held to be this by his servants. If he had been victorious, he would have demanded divine honor from all rational creatures and absolute temporal power over the whole world. Sauron's goal was to order the whole world beneath himself and be heralded as a god king. What better way to make that order than to dominate men and turn them into wraiths, controlled and unable to act of their own volition. And when someone finds your most prized treasure, they must be punished. Otherwise, order would completely fall apart. But Frodo did not become a wraith, and that is thanks to two main things. One, Strider. Gandalf admits quite early in the conversation that Aragorn saved the whole trip from disaster. I'm assuming he means them all dying rather than, what happened, which was kind of a disaster in my opinion anyway, but, I'm not there. And what we learn about Frodo here is that he maybe is not as learned as he thought, or maybe Bilbo neglected some of his teaching. Gandalf says, "But there are few left in Middle-earth like Aragorn, son of Arathorn. The race of the kings from over the sea is nearly at an end. It may be that this War of the Ring will be their last adventure." "Do you really mean that Strider is one of the people of the old kings?" said Frodo in wonder. "I thought they'd all vanished long ago. I thought he was only a ranger." "Only a ranger?" cried Gandalf. "My dear Frodo, that is just what the rangers are. The last remnant in the north of the great people, the men of the west." We learn here, and kind of in the prologue again, Aragorn is a man of the west. Of course, the west means Numenor, and to someone like Frodo, who had a teacher like Bilbo, that would really mean something. Coming from Numenor, the kings of the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor ruled much of Middle-earth and helped in bringing Sauron down at the end of the Third Age. They all descended from Elros, brother of Elrond, and thus their father Eärendil. Their line is full of great elf friends, half-elves, and even Maya. He basically has angelic blood in him. It's like if I met a British guy named Simon here in the US. We hung out while he was on vacation, but really hit it off. We both love Tolkien, so that's a great start. Message back and forth, and I mentioned be a vacation across the pond later. Simon thinks I should come visit him, and I see a picture of the professor on Simon's mantle. I ask him about that, because, I like Tolkien a lot, but I don't have a picture of him around, only to find out that I'm now friends with Simon Tolkien, which I'm sure a bunch of you figured out already. That would be insane, and I would probably have a hard time learning how to go back to talking to him the way I did before, right? He's descended from royalty, essentially. That's how I imagine Frodo is feeling right now, just basically starstruck. And the second reason he survived? Hobbits are stronger than men. According to Gandalf anyway. And it seems that hobbits fade very reluctantly. I have known strong warriors of the big people who would quickly have been overcome by that splinter which you bore for 17 days. But honestly, at this point, is anybody really surprised? We've already established hobbits are built better to resist the ring's power by not craving power. They're still susceptible to it, of course, but they don't really want for that much, mostly just food and some sleep. So even in this situation, Frodo is resisting something that actually pierced him rather than just the ring. It's not surprising that he held up for 17 days. Not to mention he resisted the Witch King's attack on Weathertop and made the Wraith miss in the attack in the first place. I'll say it again, hobbits equal, stronger than men. Now the next reveal here is subtle, but is really only a reveal for people who have already read the book. It's even more of a shocking statement once you've read kind of the whole major legendarium. Gandalf, while looking Frodo over, notices this. But to the wizard's eye, there was a faint change, just a hint, as it were, of transparency about him, and especially about the left hand that lay outside the coverlet. Still, that must be expected, said Gandalf to himself. He is not half through yet, and to what he will come in the end, not even Elrond can foretell. Not to evil, I think. He may become like a glass filled with a clear light for eyes to see that can. And like I hinted at, there's a bit to unpack here. First, I want to briefly go over who wrote this part. I think Gandalf probably told this to Frodo at some point after the ring was destroyed. Makes sense to me that it was part of their conversation and kind of debriefing. But do you really think Frodo would write that in the Red Book? Frodo is far too humble for that. And this is one of those times when I'm almost certain Sam got his pen out, added his piece, but why? Well, let's start with the obvious. In a few chapters, Frodo gets a gift from Galadriel and Lothlorien. It's a clear phial of crystal. And what does she say about it? In this phial, she said, is caught the light of Eärendil's star. Set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. But what is Eärendil's star, anyway? Aside from the tattoo in my ribs, Eärendil is the son of Tuor and Idril. Tuor is essentially the culmination of all three houses of the Edain, the men who were friends with the elves in the First Age. Idril is the daughter of an elven king, Turgon, and his wife Elenwe. Side note, Turgon is the grandson of Finwë, the first High King of the Noldor, and the father of Fëanor. Because of his parents, Arendelle is half-elven. His story is later in this chapter in verse, but basically he gets a Silmaril, which helps him get to Valinor and convince the Valar to fight against Morgoth. And what happens to Arendelle after that? He rides in his boat Vingalat and Silmaril on his brow, patrolling the skies. He becomes a star. So the light in the File of Galadriel gives Frodo is a light from a Silmaril, which is light from the original two trees. But not only is that a reference to the File of Galadriel, which makes us think about Arendelle, it's a reference directly to Arendelle himself. Sam here is connecting Frodo to not just a star in the sky, but to a savior of the elves. In the world, without Arendelle, the Valar would not have ridden forth from Valinor against Morgoth. The men of Arendelle's father and elves of his mother would have continued to suffer and die. He even came in at the last second, struck down Encedlagon the Black, mightiest of dragons. And now he patrols the night sky, some say, against the escape of Morgoth. And like Arendelle, Frodo will travel to Valinor and see the Blessed Realm. So in this little, almost throwaway thought of Gandalf's, we learn just how important Frodo is. But if this is our first read through, we don't even know that yet. Tolkien was simply a master. With a couple sentences, he brought to mind hours and hours of reading and some of the most epic battles imaginable. Of course, without Christopher Tolkien, we wouldn't have any of it. I truly believe we are in debt to both of them for what they've given us here. I don't think any other work could get us talking for so long about so many different things. I love it. And I think that's where I'll have to end for this video. There's just too much to cover in this chapter to keep going for tonight. Next week, we'll start with some people's favorite topic, how much Gandalf hates Pippin. Thank you all again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help out the channel. And until next time, remember, out in Tula, day shall come again.